You won't believe the story I found. Seriously. It's about a desperate mother, a captured child, and a Comanche chief who sees something nobody else does. What happens in the next moments will change every life in that camp forever. The harsh wind swept across the plains of the Texas Territory, carrying the scent of sage and dust. The year was 1852, and the frontier was beautiful, yes, but also deadly. Sarah Miller clutched her 5-year-old daughter Emma tightly. They'd been traveling for weeks, leaving behind the comforts of St. Louis after Sarah had lost her husband to typhoid fever. Her only beacon? The promise of a new beginning with her brother's family in California. "Mama, I'm thirsty," Emma whispered, her small voice barely audible over the creaking wheels. Sarah reached for the canteen, rationing what little water remained. "Just a small sip, darling. We'll reach the river by nightfall." The wagon master, Mr. Barton, had assured them they would find a suitable camp. Sarah trusted him, but she couldn't ignore his increasingly worried glances toward the horizon. Everyone knew this was Comanche territory, and the rumors of raids had put everyone on a razor's edge. Then she saw it, a cloud of dust in the distance. At first, she thought it was a storm brewing, but Mr. Barton's shout shattered that hope. "Indians! Everyone! Circle the wagons!" Panic erupted. Men scrambled for rifles. Women gathered children. Sarah froze, for a split second, before her mother's instinct took over. She pulled Emma down from their perch and hurried her inside the canvas-covered wagon. "Stay here and don't make a sound," she instructed, pressing a finger to her lips. Emma's blue eyes widened with fear, but she nodded. The thundering of hooves grew louder, drowning out the shouted commands of Mr. Barton. Sarah peered through a small tear in the canvas and saw them. Comanche warriors. At least 20 strong, their faces painted for battle, riding in perfect formation toward the vulnerable wagon train. The first shots rang out from the settlers, but it was hopeless. They were outnumbered. Sarah watched in horror as one by one, the men fell. Women screamed. Children cried. The air filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder and blood. When 2 warriors approached her wagon, Sarah grabbed the small pistol her late husband had insisted she learn to use. Her hands shook, but her resolve was firm. She would protect Emma at all costs. The canvas was ripped away, and Sarah found herself face to face with a young warrior. Without hesitation, she fired. The shot went wide, and before she could cock the hammer again, the warrior had leaped into the wagon and knocked the weapon from her hand. "Run! Emma!" Sarah screamed as she struggled. Emma darted from the wagon, but another warrior quickly caught the child, hoisting her onto his horse. Sarah fought with the desperation of a mother bear, clawing and biting, until a blow to her head sent her world spinning into darkness. When she awoke, the sun was setting. An eerily beautiful orange glow covered a scene of absolute devastation. The wagons had been ransacked. Bodies lay scattered. Smoke rose from several small fires. "Emma!" Sarah called out, her voice breaking with each cry, but received no response. A sound behind her made her turn. A badly wounded settler crawled toward her. "They took the women and children," he gasped. "The Comanche took them north." Sarah's world collapsed. "Emma," she whispered, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. "My Emma." With trembling legs, she stood and surveyed the carnage. The Comanche had taken supplies, horses, and captives, but had left a few mounts behind. Making a decision that would alter the course of her life, Sarah gathered what supplies she could salvage, mounted one of the remaining horses, and set off in the direction the warriors had gone. "I'm coming for you, Emma," she vowed to the wind. "I won't stop until I find you." As night fell over the plains, Sarah pushed forward, guided only by maternal instinct and the faint trail left by the war party. She knew the stories of white captives. She knew the fates that often befell them. But she refused to believe such a fate awaited her sweet Emma. The thought of her child, frightened and alone among strangers, spurred Sarah onward, despite her own fear and exhaustion. The vast, star-filled sky offered little comfort as she rode through the darkness. Her determination overshadowed the voice of reason that told her pursuing a Comanche war party alone was suicide. But what choice did she have? Every moment that passed was another moment Emma spent in captivity. Another opportunity for harm to come to her child. I promised your father I would keep you safe, Sarah whispered, the words carried away by the night wind. And I intend to honor that promise, no matter what it takes. 3 days passed. Sarah's supplies were dwindling. Exhaustion tugged at her every movement. But determination kept her moving forward. The trail had led her deeper into Comanche territory, a place few white settlers ever ventured willingly. As dawn broke on the 4th day, Sarah spotted smoke rising in the distance. Cautiously, she approached on foot, leaving her horse tethered behind a cluster of rocks. Crawling to the edge of a bluff, she gazed down at a Comanche encampment nestled in a sheltered valley. Dozens of teepees formed a semicircle around a central fire. Warriors, women, and children went about their morning activities. Sarah's heart raced as she scanned the camp, desperately seeking any sign of Emma or the other captives. Then she saw them. A group of women and children clearly from the wagon train, gathered under guard near the center of the camp, and among them, her golden-haired Emma, clutching a small rag doll. Relief washed over Sarah, followed quickly by a renewed determination. Emma was alive. But the horrifying truth settled in. How could one woman possibly rescue her child from an entire Comanche village? Sarah retreated from the bluff to think. She needed to observe, to learn the patterns of the camp, to find a moment when Emma might be less heavily guarded. For 2 days, Sarah watched from different vantage points. She noted when guards changed and when the camp was most active or quiet. She noticed the captives were kept together, but Emma seemed to be treated with particular interest by several of the Comanche women. The child's bright blonde hair and blue eyes made her an object of fascination. On the evening of the 2nd day, as Sarah observed from a hidden position closer to the camp, she witnessed something that made her blood run cold. A warrior approached the captives, pointing directly at Emma. The other captive women formed a protective circle around the child, but were shoved aside. Without thinking, Sarah emerged from her hiding place and ran toward the camp, heedless of the danger. She had barely reached the edge of the encampment when she was spotted. Warriors quickly surrounded her. Spears and knives pointed at her heart, but Sarah's eyes remained fixed on Emma. "Mama!" Emma cried out, trying to run to her mother, but held back by a Comanche woman. "Please," Sarah begged the warriors, hoping they would sense her desperation. "She's my daughter. Don't hurt her." The warriors seized Sarah, binding her wrists with rawhide. They led her to the center of the camp, where the other captives watched with a mixture of surprise and renewed fear. As Sarah was pushed to her knees before what appeared to be the camp's leadership, whispers rippled through the gathered Comanche. An older warrior stepped forward, studying Sarah with intense dark eyes. His face was lined with age and experience, his long black hair streaked with silver. By his bearing and the respect shown to him by the others, Sarah guessed he held a position of authority. He spoke to her in Comanche, gesturing toward Emma. When Sarah shook her head, unable to understand, he tried broken English. "You come for small one?" "Yes," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "She's my daughter." The older warrior turned to a younger man beside him, one whose elaborate headdress and decorated shield marked him as someone of significance. This younger man, tall, powerfully built, with a stern countenance, stepped forward to inspect Sarah more closely. His dark eyes seemed to pierce through her, assessing her worth, her threat, her very soul. This, Sarah realized with a chill, must be the chief of this band. His presence commanded attention, and even the seasoned warriors seemed to defer to him. He couldn't have been more than 30 summers old, but authority sat upon his shoulders like a mantle. He spoke sharply in Comanche, and Sarah was roughly pulled to her feet. The chief circled her slowly, his expression unreadable. Sarah stood as tall as her exhausted frame would allow, meeting his gaze whenever it fell upon her. "I am Rising Wolf," he finally said in accented but clear English, surprising Sarah. "You brave woman. Foolish, but brave." "I want my daughter," Sarah replied, glancing toward Emma, who watched the exchange with wide, frightened eyes. Rising Wolf followed her gaze. "Golden hair," he nodded toward Emma. "Special child. Bring good fortune to tribe." Fear clutched at Sarah's heart. She had heard stories of native tribes adopting white children, raising them as their own until they forgot their previous lives. The thought of Emma forgetting her, forgetting their life together, was unbearable. "Please," Sarah whispered. "She's all I have." Rising Wolf studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "You stay. Child stays. You serve tribe. Maybe one day." He left the sentence unfinished, but Sarah understood the implication. There was no guarantee she would ever be allowed to leave with Emma. But at least they would be together. That night, Sarah was reunited with Emma in a small teepee where the other captive women were kept. Emma flung herself into her mother's arms, sobbing with relief. "I knew you'd come, Mama," Emma whispered. "I told them my mama would find me." Sarah held her daughter close, stroking her tangled blonde hair. "I'll always find you, my love. Always." The other captive women gathered around, their faces showing both happiness for the reunion and concern for what the future held. An older woman named Martha explained what she had learned of their situation. "The young ones and those of childbearing age will be adopted into the tribe," Martha said quietly. "The rest—" She trailed off, but Sarah could fill in the unspoken fate. "We need to escape," Sarah whispered, mindful of the guard posted outside their teepee. "All of us." Martha shook her head sadly. "They watch us too closely, and where would we go? We're deep in their territory now." Sarah fell silent, knowing Martha spoke the truth. For now, survival and keeping Emma close were her priorities. She would watch, wait, and plan. Somehow, someday, they would find their way back to freedom. Or would they? Days turned into weeks. Sarah and Emma settled into a routine within the Comanche camp. Sarah was put to work with the other captive women, tanning hides, preparing food, and performing various tasks. Emma, to Sarah's relief, was allowed to stay with her during the day. Though the Comanche women often came to admire the child's fair features, Sarah noticed that Rising Wolf frequently observed them from a distance, his expression thoughtful. Once, when a warrior had been rough with Sarah, the chief had intervened with a sharp command that had sent the offender slinking away. Sarah wasn't sure what to make of this apparent protection, but she was grateful for anything that improved their chances of survival. One evening, as Sarah sat outside their teepee, mending a torn garment, Rising Wolf approached and sat beside her. Emma had already fallen asleep inside, exhausted from a day of playing with the Comanche children. "Your hands work well," Rising Wolf commented, nodding at Sarah's neat stitches. "Thank you," Sarah replied cautiously, never certain of his intentions. "Your daughter learns our ways quickly," he continued. "Soon she speak Comanche better than English." Sarah's hands stilled. "She will never forget who she is." Rising Wolf's expression remained impassive, but Sarah thought she detected a glimmer of respect in his dark eyes. "Who she is changes. Who you are changes. This is way of life." As he rose to leave, Sarah gathered her courage. "Why did you attack our wagon train? We meant no harm. We were just passing through." Rising Wolf looked down at her, his face hardening. "White men bring disease. White men kill buffalo. White men take land. We protect what is ours." Before Sarah could respond, he walked away, leaving her with troubling thoughts about the conflict between their peoples. A conflict into which she and Emma had been unwittingly drawn. The seasons turned, and autumn painted the plains in hues of gold and russet. Sarah had been in the Comanche camp for nearly 3 months. Long enough to learn basic words and phrases in their language, and to understand some of their customs. Emma, with the adaptability of childhood, had embraced many aspects of Comanche life, playing with the tribal children and picking up their language far more quickly than her mother. Sarah's relationship with Rising Wolf had evolved into something she couldn't quite define. He sought her out regularly, asking her about the ways of her people, sometimes sharing stories of his own. She learned that he had been educated briefly at a mission school as a boy, which explained his facility with English. He had risen to leadership young after proving himself in battle against both rival tribes and white settlers. One crisp morning, as Sarah worked outside the women's teepee, a commotion at the edge of the camp drew her attention. A group of warriors returned from what appeared to be a hunting expedition. But their grim faces suggested something had gone wrong. Rising Wolf met them, listening intently to their report, before his gaze swept across the camp and landed on Sarah. Later that day, he summoned her to his tepee. The air inside was warm and fragrant with cedar smoke. Rising Wolf sat cross-legged before a small fire, his face solemn in the flickering light. "Your people come," he said without preamble. "Soldiers. Many soldiers." Sarah's heart leaped with hope, even as apprehension filled her. "How far?" "2 days' ride. They burn villages. Kill our people." His voice remained steady, but Sarah could see the anger burning in his eyes. "Not all white men are the same," Sarah said cautiously. "Just as not all Comanche are the same." Rising Wolf studied her face. "You wish to return to your people." It wasn't a question, but Sarah answered anyway. "I wish for my daughter to be safe. I wish for no more bloodshed." "There will be battle," Rising Wolf stated flatly. "Unless we move camp, go north into the mountains." Sarah took a deep breath. "And us?" "The captives." Rising Wolf's expression revealed nothing of his thoughts. "Some say kill captives. Leave no burden." Fear gripped Sarah's heart, but she forced herself to remain calm. "And what do you say?" For a long moment, Rising Wolf was silent, the only sound the soft crackling of the fire. Finally, he spoke. "I say you are under my protection. You and Golden Hair." Relief washed over Sarah, though she was careful not to show it too plainly. "And the others?" "They come too," Rising Wolf conceded. "But you—" He paused, seeming to search for words. "You have courage of Comanche woman. You understand our ways now." Sarah wasn't sure how to respond to what seemed almost like praise. Before she could formulate a reply, Rising Wolf continued. "Tomorrow we break camp. Long journey ahead. Many dangers." Sarah nodded her understanding. "Thank you for your protection." As she turned to leave, Rising Wolf spoke again. "Sarah." It was the first time he had used her name. "In another life, you would make good Comanche wife." The words hung in the air between them, charged with meaning Sarah wasn't ready to examine. She inclined her head slightly and slipped out of the tepee, her mind racing with the implications of everything she had learned. The camp was a flurry of activity the next morning. Teepees were dismantled, belongings packed onto travois, horses readied for the journey. Sarah helped the other captive women, all while keeping Emma close. "Where are we going, Mama?" Emma asked. "To the mountains," Sarah replied, adjusting the leather tunic Emma now wore instead of her tattered dress. "It will be an adventure." Emma nodded solemnly. "Will Rising Wolf lead us? He says I'm brave like you." Sarah's hands stilled. "When did he tell you that?" "When he brought me this." Emma pulled a small carved wooden horse from the pouch at her waist. "He said, 'Brave girls should have brave horses.'" Sarah examined the carving, touched by the unexpected kindness. The figure was beautifully crafted. "It's lovely, Emma. Did you thank him?" "Yes, Mama, in Comanche." Emma beamed proudly. By midday, the camp was on the move, a long procession heading north toward the distant mountains. Rising Wolf rode at the front, occasionally dropping back to check on the column. Whenever he passed near Sarah and Emma, his gaze lingered, and once he stopped to ensure they had enough water for the journey. The first day of travel passed without incident, but as they made camp that evening, Sarah overheard worried conversations among the warriors. Even with her limited understanding of Comanche, she could tell they feared the soldiers were following their trail. Her suspicions were confirmed when Rising Wolf approached her as she prepared Emma for sleep. "Soldiers follow," he said quietly. "Move faster tomorrow." Sarah nodded, then hesitated before asking, "If they catch us, what will happen?" Rising Wolf's expression darkened. "For us, death. For you?" He shrugged. "Return to your people. If they don't shoot you first, thinking you Comanche now." The stark reality of their situation settled over Sarah. After months among the Comanche, wearing their clothing and learning their ways, Would the soldiers even recognize her as white? Would they listen before they fired? And what of the other captives? There must be a way to prevent bloodshed, Sarah said, almost to herself. Rising, Wolf watched her curiously. You care what happens to Comanche? Sarah met his gaze steadily. I care what happens to people. All people. Something shifted in Rising Wolf's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. He reached out, hesitated, then lightly touched Sarah's cheek with calloused fingers. Sleep now, he said softly. Tomorrow, long journey. As he walked away, Sarah realized her heart was beating faster, and not entirely from fear. Confused by her reaction, she turned her attention back to settling Emma for the night, pushing all other thoughts aside. The second day of travel was harder, the pace punishing as the band pushed deeper into rougher terrain. By late afternoon, even the hardiest warriors showed signs of fatigue, and the women and children struggled to keep up. When they finally stopped to make camp in a sheltered valley, Sarah was helping Emma drink when shouts of alarm rang out. Warriors rushed to defensive positions. Women gathered children, and within moments, chaos erupted. Soldiers on horseback appeared at the valley's entrance, their rifles already firing into the Comanche ranks. The ambush had been perfectly executed, catching the band at their most vulnerable. Emma, run! Sarah pushed her daughter toward the cover of nearby boulders, shielding the child with her own body as bullets whizzed overhead. They had nearly reached safety when Sarah heard a cry of pain nearby. She turned to see a Comanche woman fallen, blood staining her buckskin dress, her young son standing frozen beside her. Without hesitation, Sarah darted from cover, grabbed the boy, and pulled him with them behind the boulders. The child couldn't have been more than 4, his dark eyes wide with terror. Stay here, Sarah instructed both children. Don't move until I come back. Emma clutched the Comanche boy's hand. Be careful, Mama. Sarah crept back to the wounded woman, staying low to avoid the bullets still flying. The woman's breathing was labored. Help you, Sarah said in broken Comanche, examining the wound in the woman's shoulder. It was bleeding heavily, but didn't appear fatal if treated quickly. Using strips torn from her own garment, Sarah bound the wound as best she could, then helped the woman to her feet. Together, they stumbled toward the relative safety of the boulders where the children waited. As they moved, Sarah became aware of a mounted figure charging toward them through the smoke and confusion of battle. Her heart lurched with terror until she recognized Rising Wolf. His face streaked with war paint, his expression fierce with concern. He leaped from his horse beside them, speaking rapidly to the wounded woman. His sister, Sarah realized from their interaction. With careful strength, he lifted her onto his horse, then turned to Sarah. Children. Safe. Sarah pointed to the boulders. There. Rising Wolf nodded once, then made a decision. Take horse. Take children. Ride north. He pointed toward a narrow path through the hills. We follow when we can. I can't leave, Sarah began, but Rising Wolf cut her off. Must save children, he insisted. Save yourself. Go now. A bullet struck the ground near their feet, emphasizing his words. Rising Wolf helped his sister from the horse, supporting her weight as Sarah mounted. Together they retrieved Emma and the Comanche boy from behind the boulders, lifting them up to sit before Sarah on the horse. North, Rising Wolf repeated, pointing again to the pass. Creek follows path, water, shelter. He reached up, his hand closing briefly around Sarah's. Be safe. Before Sarah could respond, he slapped the horse's flank, sending them galloping away from the battle. Sarah leaned low over the children, protecting them as best she could. As they crested a small rise, Sarah couldn't help looking back. The valley below was filled with smoke and the sounds of battle. The outcome was uncertain. Somewhere in that chaos was Rising Wolf, fighting not just for his own life, but for the survival of his people. With a heavy heart, Sarah turned the horse northward again. Her thoughts divided between the immediate need to protect the children and concern for those they had left behind, particularly the Comanche chief who had somehow, against all odds, earned her respect, and perhaps something more. Will they be all right, Mama? Emma asked, her voice small against the wind. Sarah wished she could offer certainty. Rising Wolf is strong and clever, she said instead. We must be strong too, and find safe shelter before nightfall. As they rode toward the mountain pass, Sarah silently prayed for those they had left behind, surprised to find herself including the Comanche in those prayers, with the same fervor she reserved for the other captives. Somewhere along the way, the clear divisions between her people and them had blurred, leaving her uncertain where she truly belonged. A terrifying thought began to form. Did she even want to go back? 3 days had passed since Sarah fled the battlefield with the children. Following Rising Wolf's directions, they had found the creek and followed it deeper into the mountains, eventually discovering a small cave that provided shelter from the increasingly cold nights. The Comanche boy, whose name Sarah learned was Little Fox, had gradually warmed to them. Emma had appointed herself Little Fox's protector, teaching him English words while he taught her Comanche ones. Their resilience amazed Sarah. On the morning of the 4th day, Sarah was showing the children how to identify animal tracks when she heard the distant sound of hoofbeats. Immediately on alert, she hurried the children back to the cave, instructing them to remain hidden while she investigated. Concealing herself behind a large boulder, Sarah watched the approaching riders with a mixture of hope and dread. As they drew nearer, she recognized the distinctive Comanche riding style and felt her heart leap. Among the small party of warriors, riding tall and proud at their head, was Rising Wolf. Sarah emerged from hiding, waving to attract their attention. Rising Wolf spotted her immediately, spurring his horse forward. He dismounted in a fluid motion and strode toward her, his face revealing relief before returning to its customary stoicism. "You are safe," he said, his eyes scanning her for injury. "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "The children too. How did you find us?" "Followed your trail," Rising Wolf replied with a hint of pride. "Not easy. You hide tracks well now." Sarah felt an unexpected flush of pleasure at the compliment. "The battle? The others?" Rising Wolf's expression darkened. "Many lost. Soldiers retreat after we fight hard. Little Fox's mother lives, but wounded. She asks for her son." "He's well," Sarah assured him. "Emma has been caring for him like a brother." Something softened in Rising Wolf's gaze. "Golden Hair has good heart, like her mother." Sarah called to the children, who emerged cautiously from the cave. Little Fox gave a cry of joy when he saw the warriors and ran to them. Emma approached more slowly, staying close to Sarah's side. "Are we going back to the camp?" Emma asked, looking up at Rising Wolf with curious eyes. Rising Wolf crouched to her level. "No camp now. We join other Comanche bands. Go further north." He straightened and turned to Sarah. "You come with us." The question hung in the air, loaded with implications. Sarah hesitated, torn between the pull toward what remained of her old life and the connections formed during her time among the Comanche. "The other captives?" she asked. "Some escaped in battle. Some—" Rising Wolf looked away briefly. "Some did not survive." Sarah closed her eyes, grief washing over her for the women she had come to know. When she opened them again, Rising Wolf was watching her intently. "There is trading post 2 days' ride west," he said quietly. "I can take you there. You return to your people." It was the offer of freedom she had dreamed of for months. Yet now that it was presented, Sarah found herself strangely reluctant. "I need time to think," she said finally. Rising Wolf nodded once. "We rest here tonight. Decide tomorrow." As the warriors set up a small camp, Sarah observed how naturally Emma interacted with them, how the child had adapted to a life so different from the one they had known. She wondered what awaited them if they returned to white society. Would they ever truly belong again after what they had experienced? Could they ever truly be white again? That evening, as the children slept and the warriors kept watch, Rising Wolf joined Sarah by the small fire outside the cave. "Why did you protect us?" Sarah asked the question that had lingered in her mind. "You could have killed us with the others from the wagon train." Rising Wolf was silent for a long moment, gazing into the flames. "When warriors attack wagon, I see you fight for your child like she-wolf protects cubs. He looked up, meeting Sarah's eyes. I respect courage, even in enemy. Am I still your enemy? Sarah asked softly. Rising Wolf did not answer immediately. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows across his stern, yet strangely kind face. When I look at you now, Sarah, he finally said, using her name again, I do not see the enemy. I see the one who saved Little Fox. I see the one who learned our language and did not scorn our ways. I am a mother, Sarah replied simply. I would save any child. That is the truth, Rising Wolf agreed, a rare smile touching his lips. But I see your heart. You see the good in us, too. He picked up a small, smooth river stone and turned it over in his hand. When you go back, they will ask you what you saw. What will you tell them? The question was a hammer blow. If she went back, she would be expected to talk about savages, about a brutal attack, about her suffering. She would not be able to speak of his protection, or Emma's joy with the Comanche children, or the quiet respect they had built. I will tell them the truth that matters, Sarah said, that my daughter is safe, and that I was saved by a man who valued life and courage. Rising Wolf nodded slowly. The trading post is 2 days west. I will ride with you at dawn. His words confirmed her fear. He was letting her go. This was his final act of respect, his way of returning her to her people, acknowledging that she couldn't truly become one of his. But now, she didn't want to leave. She thought of the cold, formal life in California, the judging eyes of her brother's wife, the endless grief for her husband that she had finally started to set aside while focused on survival. Here, she was vital. Here, she had purpose. And here, she was no longer alone in the world. What if I choose not to go? Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper, yet it felt like a shout. Rising Wolf met her gaze, his dark eyes suddenly intense. That is not the choice for your people. It is my choice, Sarah insisted. Emma's choice. She is happy here. She is learning. She is alive. Rising Wolf watched the sleeping children. The white world will not let you keep her here. They will send soldiers again. They will never stop hunting golden hair and the women who were stolen. He was talking about a constant bloody war she would never escape. But she thought of his hand on her cheek, the comfort of his presence, the deep, silent connection between them that transcended language and culture. I want to stay with you, Sarah said, making the admission that changed everything. A deep wave of surprise passed over Rising Wolf's face, instantly masked. He set the stone down by the fire. I am chief, he said. I must lead my people north to survive. There is no time for a white woman's indecision. I am not indecisive, Sarah countered, standing up to face him. I made a choice on the plains when I rode after you. I am making a choice now. I choose the life that gives my daughter and me peace, not the one that sends us back to a world that left us nothing but dust. Rising Wolf stood, towering over her. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze searching. If you stay, he said, his voice low, you become Comanche. Forever. No return. You work. You hunt. You learn to fight. You bear my children if I take you as wife. Your past is dead. The intensity of his words was breathtaking. He was laying out a path of no return, a destiny she could never have imagined. I accept your path, Sarah said, meeting his gaze without flinching. I am already dead to the world that saw me as a victim. I will be born again here, as a mother and as your. She trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. Rising Wolf closed the distance between them. I do not take a woman who is not willing, Sarah. You must be willing to live with a fierce heart. My heart is fierce for Emma, Sarah replied, and it is fierce for the man who saw my courage. Rising Wolf nodded slowly, his eyes glowing in the firelight. Then you are no longer captive. You are family. He reached out and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her palm. The gesture was both a confirmation of her choice and a promise. We leave for the north at first light, he said. You ride beside me. Sarah's heart swelled. She was trading one life for a radically different one. A life of perpetual danger and immense cultural change. But she was doing it freely. And with the man who respected her strength more than any man she had ever known. Suddenly, a loud noise at the edge of the camp shattered the moment. A young warrior ran toward them, his eyes wide with urgency. "Chief, they follow! Not soldiers, rangers! They come from the west! They saw the trail to the trading post and guessed our direction." Rising Wolf's face turned to stone. The trading post. His offer of freedom was now the very thing that betrayed their position. "They will be here by dawn," the warrior warned. Rising Wolf turned to Sarah, his face grim. "They follow the path I would have taken you on. They come for the white woman, and they will kill everyone in their way to get her back." "I won't let that happen," Sarah said, her mind already racing. She was the lure. She could be the bait. "We move the band now," Rising Wolf commanded, turning to the others. "We go higher into the peaks, where the horses cannot follow. Warriors, prepare the ambush point on the canyon trail." As the camp sprang into action, Sarah grabbed Emma. "Listen to me, my love. We are playing a game. A very important game." "What game, Mama?" "We are going back to the west trail, where the Comanche won't go," Sarah whispered. "You and Little Fox will go alone for a little while." Emma's eyes widened, but before she could object, Sarah continued. "Rising Wolf showed me the path to the trading post. We will take the horse just a little way. We will leave a broken trail, just enough for the rangers to see, and then we will double back and find the main group in the mountains." It was a risky, desperate plan. To lead the rangers away from the main group by offering them the trail to the captive they were looking for. "I will go with you," Rising Wolf insisted. "No," Sarah said, her voice firm. "You must lead your people to the peaks. You are the chief. I am the bait. They won't suspect a white woman doing this alone." Rising Wolf looked at her, his respect now mingled with deep concern. "If they catch you, they will ask questions, and then they will follow your trail back here." "They won't catch me," Sarah vowed. "I am a Comanche woman now, remember?" She didn't wait for his response. She lifted Emma and Little Fox onto the horse, gave them water, and then led the horse herself, walking slowly, deliberately, toward the path that led west and away from the mountains. She was leaving the safety of the man who loved her, risking everything on a bluff and her newfound wilderness skills. She walked for an hour, carefully breaking branches, kicking up dust, and leaving a clear, undeniable trail. Just before dawn, she found the perfect spot, a place where the terrain changed abruptly, making it easy to disappear into a dense thicket of scrub brush. She tethered the horse loosely, gave Emma one final fierce hug, and pointed back toward the distant peaks. "Follow the creek until you can't see the plains anymore. Then wait. I will find you." Emma, seeing the seriousness in her mother's eyes, didn't cry. "Be safe, Mama." Little Fox nodded with silent understanding. Sarah watched them go, two small figures disappearing into the pre-dawn gloom, praying that the Comanche boy's survival skills and Emma's courage would see them through. Then she waited. It wasn't long before she heard them. The heavy, unrefined sound of the ranger patrol, crashing through the brush in their haste. 5 men, heavily armed, riding hard. She saw the lead ranger point at the clear tracks she had left. "There! She's leading the horse, probably exhausted. She's heading for the post. We've got 'em." They galloped past her hiding spot, following the trail, their eyes fixed on the evidence of the horse and 2 small footprints she had painstakingly created. Sarah held her breath until the sound of their horses faded. Once the silence returned, she moved like smoke, retracing her steps, but staying high, out of sight of the main trail. She found Emma and Little Fox exactly where she had told them to wait, nestled in a small alcove. "The game is done," Sarah whispered, pulling them into a relieved embrace. "Now we go home." But as they started their ascent into the high peaks, the sound of the rangers' horses returned. They had realized the deception and were now doubling back, much faster and angrier. "This way!" Sarah shouted, scrambling up a narrow, rocky ledge. They scrambled upwards, the children using handholds as naturally as young mountain goats. The rangers below shouted, but the terrain made it impossible for them to follow on horseback. One ranger, however, was on foot and gaining ground. He was a ruthless tracker, focused solely on the reward for the rescued captive. He caught sight of Sarah, scrambling over a ridge. "Stop! You heathen whore! I'm taking the girl!" He raised his rifle. Sarah didn't look back. She pushed Emma and Little Fox over the crest of the ridge. The shot rang out. Sarah stumbled, a searing pain exploding in her left shoulder. She fell to her knees, but her mind was still fixed on the children. She had to make it over the ridge. A figure descended the rocks behind her with impossible speed. She turned, expecting the ranger, but it was Rising Wolf. He had left his people and tracked her to this spot, knowing her plan was too risky. Rising, Wolf tackled the ranger, the two men tumbling down the rocky slope in a brutal struggle. The ranger's rifle skittered away. They fought with primal fury, fists and knives flashing. Rising Wolf, lean and agile, was fighting for the survival of his new family. The ranger was fighting for his reward. Sarah, dazed and bleeding, watched the struggle. She couldn't move her left arm. Rising, Wolf was losing ground. The ranger was bigger, stronger, and more desperate. Suddenly, the ranger drew a hidden knife. "Mama!" Emma screamed, and Sarah's vision cleared. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah snatched a fist-sized rock from the ground, stood on shaking legs, and hurled it with her right arm at the ranger's head. The rock struck the ranger with a sickening thud. He staggered, dropping the knife. Rising, Wolf seized the opportunity, rolling on top of him and delivering a single, decisive blow that ended the fight. He rose, breathing heavily, and rushed to Sarah, kneeling beside her. "The wound," he said, examining her shoulder. "You are hurt." "I'll live," Sarah gasped, forcing a smile. "You didn't think I would let you do all the fighting, did you?" Rising Wolf looked at her, his eyes blazing with a mix of relief and adoration. "My wife," he said, the words simple, final, and true. "You are more Comanche than any I have known." He helped her up. Emma and Little Fox ran to them. The rest of the ranger patrol was already far down the trail, following the bait Sarah had laid, convinced they were closing in on the trading post. The Comanche band, meanwhile, was safe in the high peaks. They were safe. The ultimate twist. The captive had become the protector, and the chief had become her family. Rising Wolf led Sarah and the children up the final ascent, where the main Comanche band was already settling into a secure, hidden valley. As they reached the camp, the women rushed out, not with fear, but with respect. They had heard the story of the white woman's courage, of her sacrifice for the children, and her decision to turn back from the path to her own people. Little Fox ran to his mother, who wept with relief. She smiled at Sarah, a genuine, grateful, sisterly smile that crossed the deepest cultural divide. Sarah stood beside Rising Wolf, no longer a captive, but a member of the tribe, her destiny finally clear. She was home. She was at peace. She had traded comfort for courage, and loneliness for love. The life ahead would be harsh, but it would be theirs, built on a foundation of mutual respect and a shared, fierce heart. And Emma? She was safe. She was loved. She was happy. She had found a family where her mother had found a husband, a white woman, a Comanche chief, a family forged by fire. The frontier was indeed beautiful and dangerous. But now, for Sarah, it was also home. If you enjoyed this story of a mother's fierce love and a chief's surprising courage, don't forget to subscribe and let me know your favorite twist in the comments below.